Yes, I am indeed wearing a shirt today that says whatever because I feel like it embodies, quite literally because it's metaphorically on her body, Cindy very well. If you don't know who Cindy is, she is an unbothered booktube queen and I am here for it. She's the literal definition of whatever. She is what people think they look like when they say they don't care about other people's opinions, as they should, except she actually genuinely doesn't seem to. I feel like her philosophy is just to do what she loves, and I think that's a great philosophy to have. I am absolutely here for Cindy's whatever. You probably know her from the I read a Court of Thorns and Roses book whatever and I became an alcoholic, or from her videos where she aggressively points a knife at the audience, which is us, and we all think that who wouldn't mind. Maybe you don't know her and that's fine. But it's really not. She's one of my favorite booktube channels. Go look at her. She is a booktuber and I have a tendency to listen to her and then put the books on my TBR and then never read them. But today I decided it's time to fix that and I decided to actually read them. I know. Let's start with White Tears, Brown Scars, How White Feminism Betrays Women of Color. This is a concise book that gets to the point in an insightful and compelling way. It walks the reader through history, through pop culture, and it does everything in a very accessible way. Actually, it mentions White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo, which I read last year. I think if you're new to reading texts about feminism and race, and both of these should absolutely intersect, this is just a good beginning to kind of get into the topic a bit more. Also, hood feminism was pretty good as well. I don't want to explain this book to you because I don't see the point, especially since Ruby Hamlet does it so well. This book covers a lot of things. Amongst these are, for example, the stereotypes that other cultures face. For example, like the dragon lady stereotype. It's the stereotype of Asian women being dangerous and not stopping to get what they want. Through this representation, it's kind of portrayed that they get what they want through their sexual ways, get all of the men around them to bend to their will. It's another version of Yellow Peril, actually. It shows the West as this innocent and pure thing and Asia as the danger. Another racial stereotype, among many more, that black girls are somehow less pure than white girls. An example of this is the outrage that people felt when they realized that Rue was black in the Hunger Games film trilogy, which was released in 2012. When I watched it and I read this book, I wasn't really using the internet that much because I was somewhere between the age of 6 to 11, because I definitely remember having read everything by the age of 11. I did not know that people were hitting Twitter to write things like, why is Rue black? And this author, Ruby, she just quoted the book had them, and I think you should hear this. And most hauntingly, a 12-year-old girl from District 11. She has dark brown skin and eyes, but other than that, she's very like prim. Okay, should I read that again? She has dark brown skin and eyes. There were thousands of tweets that said things ranging from why isn't she an innocent blonde girl to they should have listened to the book, which is a bit disturbing. And by a bit, I mean a lot. She's 12. She's a literal child. She hasn't hit the age of 13. She's not even a teenager. She's a child. Okay, first of all, they did respect the book. I still don't get why that's a problem to you if she's black, other than your internalized racial stereotypes because she's 12. It was an example of how this stereotype of white innocence rather than black innocence lives on. Now to the historical part. Here's what the author says. From the very beginnings of settler colonialism, innocence was forcibly stripped from black girls and women through a pervasive and endemic process of hypersexualization and exploitation by white men that disregarded their personal autonomy, violated their bodies repeatedly, and then projected the responsibility for this fetishization and objectification back onto the women themselves. I'll leave you with this quote and I hope you decide to pick up this book. The next book is In the Dream House, and if you think this sounds nice and it's far from the depressing truth of negative racial stereotypes still thoroughly ingrained in our society, then I'm sorry to say, but you're wrong, because it's like a bad surprise. What's a bad surprise called? Life. Ooh. No. This is basically a story of domestic abuse, psychological and emotional in queer communities. In the Dream House is by no means meant to be a comprehensive account of contemporary research about same-sex domestic abuse or its history. That book, as far as I can tell, has yet to be written, says Carmen Maria Machado. But this book was still incredible in my not so humble, since I'm making a whole video about this opinion. Carmen tells the story of her relationship arc with this charismatic young woman who slowly begins to act more erratic and more volatile. It's a memoir, but also a mix of historical and legal facts, pop culture, and there's just a lot of different angles in the way the author looks at it. So we get this memoir that's not quite like any other memoir. But at the beginning, I really struggled with the fragmented narration because each chapter is so kind of disconnected from the last. And also the chapter titles seem to be a bit like pseudo-artsy for me. For example, the name Dream House as idiom. It's probably just me, but for me the name sounded a bit like Tumblr, like poetry. You know, the sun is an orb, like my face, the leaves are green, and then the title is personification of the principle of quantum mechanics. I'm not saying that the chapter names did not fit the content of the chapter. I probably should have phrased that a bit better, but it just felt like the author was trying to make them stand out a bit too much for me. All I can say to that is she didn't really need to do that because the chapters already stood out. So emotional and so filled with panic and pain and just feeling. The choose your own adventure one, I thought that was genius. It starts with you lying in bed with the abusive woman and she starts yelling at you. Doesn't matter what reason she chose, there's always a reason for abusers, and then she would, no matter what you do, maybe you apologize to her, maybe you make her breakfast, but the story just goes back to you lying with her and she's yelling at you, and it's just a cycle. The prose was incredible. The book was written largely in second person, so that just added this extra depth because you're not looking in through the window of the dream house, you're terrifyingly in the dream house. In Song of Myself, Walt Whitman uses I when he means you, and honestly, Walt, you should take a page from Carmen's book. So Carmen talks about how queer abuse isn't really talked about and how her words might just go out and nobody will listen, how it's like the violence of the archive, she calls it. Her story is sadly not unique because so many people are abused by their partners, psychologically or maybe physically. It brings up a lot of ideas, and I wanted to share some themes that I found particularly striking. It's a memoir about psychological abuse, of course, but it's so much more than that, and it really doesn't conform to the idea of what a memoir is. So putting language to something for which you have no language is something she says. A lot of people are quick to dismiss emotional abuse as worse than physical abuse. And it's really hard for Carmen to express kind of her experience because she's dating this charismatic young woman, and when she talks about dating her, people just don't believe her because they think like, how can this nice young woman cause so much pain and suffering? And Carmen talks about how she's at a party and this drunken woman, she just takes her elbow and she says like, I believe you, and Carmen just breaks down. Emotional abuse is arguably more serious than domestic abuse, and Carmen, she curses herself for thinking this, but at some point she says, I wish that it was physical so I can show people the bruises. She brings up Paula from Gaslight. There is a character and he wants the jewels that his aunt hid in Paula's home. Gas lamps and the flickers and the driving Paula mad. Yes, he's enjoying it, but it's all side effects. It's not the point, and this is what she says. A reminder perhaps that abusers do not need to be, and rarely are, cackling maniacs. They just need to want something and not care how they get it. And another quote about what happens to Paula. Everything she is unmade by psychological violence. She's radiant, then hysterical, then utterly haunted. By the end, she is a mere husk, floating around her opulent London residence like a specter. He doesn't lock her in her room or in the house. He doesn't have to. He turns her mind into a prison. There was a bit about Bluebeard and how his wife discovers what he did to his previous wives. So she says this is how you're toughened, the newest wife reasoned. This is where the tenacity of love is practiced. Its tensile strength, its durability. You're being tested and you're passing the test. Sweet girl, sweet self. Look how good you are. Look how loyal. Look how loved. She discovers something disturbing, but she reckons it's just like a tough patch in their relationship. This was just so reflective of Carmen's initial feelings. So, okay, this whole video is becoming exponentially more depressing. Really restored my faith in humanity was when Carmen was trying to heal and get over this abusive partner, and she goes to her neighbors who are basically completely strangers, but they take care of her. They make sure she doesn't answer her phone. They help her in whatever ways possible. That was just really lovely to read, because I think that for a lot of people who are in abusive relationships, they feel like it's just them and their abuser, and it's really important to know that you aren't alone. The final book I read per Cindy's recommendation was different because it was YA. Now, recommendation sounds like she personally told me that, but no, she has no idea who I am.
They ask you how you are.
But maybe if you click some buttons, you can make that happen. Shameless self-promo, wink wink. This book, The Inheritance Games, was a wild ride. Basically, this main character, Avery, is just living her life, except it's really not that simple. Her financial situation is difficult. Her half-sister has an abusive boyfriend who's and her mom is dead. I know this seems very much like a YA trope, and it is, but it gets better. She gets a letter that's telling her that she inherited a lot of money. She has to travel to Texas to live with the spoiled descendants of the deceased billionaire, and psych, plot twist, they basically get nothing. It's all her. So it doesn't take a genius to figure out that they want her dead. And she has to live in that house for a year to actually get the money. I'll spend a lot of time talking about the book here because it's nothing special compared to the books I mentioned before. It did have some things in YA that drive me mad as well, like the instant attraction. Oh my god, the instant attraction. I love how I said it's really not that complicated, and I'm about to complain about the things for like a good solid 2 minutes. Basically, as soon as she sees the first guy arrive to her school, instead of thinking like, what's he doing here, or wow, he's gonna change my entire life, she thinks, cut me with that jawline, and I'm not even kidding, she actually says that. No, but listen to this. She looks into his blue eyes, and of course she thinks, drown me in those eyes. Bestie needs some water. Also, this whole trope of girls choosing between two guys, and of course there's some like insane difficulty why she can't date one of them. Like here, for example, oh my god, the brother likes me. This is like the definition of teen drama in fiction. As a teen, my life does not look like this, but in fiction, it always does. This is like reality TV. Okay, unpopular opinion time. I do not watch reality TV. I've only watched one show. I think it was called The Circle. They set up accounts on social media and they pretended to be someone else and they catfished, and it was vaguely interesting. But recently, I figured out what you English-speaking book people were talking about when you were saying Love Island, because we literally have a Russian title. It's called Ostrov Любви. It's Love Island, but the words are switched around. I know, I'm stupid. I have never watched a single episode of Love Island in my life, and I am not planning to, but this is what I imagine the trope to be like. But the puzzles are fun. Like, they're not that hard, but there was one that I was very confused about. If yes is no and once is never, how many sides does a triangle have? Like, what? I googled the answer. Yes, I know. It was evening, okay? I was not willing to spend my time on figuring that one out. I googled the answer. If you're curious, drop me a comment, I'll let you know. The actual like progression of find puzzle, solve puzzle, go to the next puzzle, it wasn't that bad. Like, I got a lot of them, and the plot twist at the end was sort of predictable, but I was invested, okay? Just in the idea of exploring this mansion. Maybe it's because I'm a book addict, because it said that it has 4 libraries, and there's so many signed editions. Maybe I was just looking for escapism and that's why I was so messed up. But okay, I am not done yet, because Jameson does not deserve to be able to give nicknames. MG. Guess what that stands for? Mystery Girl! That's the most drop-down terrible nickname I've heard in my entire life. Is that supposed to be romantic? I'm sorry. Avery, by the way, is the main character. I forgot to mention that. She also has a moment, since we're talking about Avery, she also has moments where she's like, I don't belong. Bro, no way she doesn't belong. She just arrived in this billionaire house all of a sudden. She's like, I don't belong. I'm not their family. Yeah, of course she's not your family. Like, yes, they're gentlemen. him, and the whole protective thing over Libby was cute because it was a normal human reaction. Yes, yes, but like still. Also, I realize this is just to drive the plot, but Avery has no regard for her safety. She literally gets told to stay safe. It doesn't matter if she solves the puzzle if she's dead. So logical, she's so rational, she's solving the puzzle. Yet and yet, whoosh, she defenestrates. All her thoughts go out of the window as she meets these four complete strangers. This book was clearly not revolutionary way 6 of Crows, but I gave it 3.5 stars and rounded it up to 4 because it was kind of fun. That concludes the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you've read any other of Cindy's favorites, drop me a comment. Let's talk about those. I hope you enjoyed the video. See you next week with a chaotic book review. Bye!